Have you ever noticed that two people can love the same dog with all their hearts, yet the dog responds to them in completely different ways? One dog follows a quiet grandfather from room to room, but seems restless around a younger family member who showers it with hugs, kisses, and excited words every day. It isn't because one person loves more than the other. It's because love and feeling loved are not always the same experience. As humans, we naturally express affection in ways that make sense to us. We hug the people we cherish. We kiss their foreheads. We tell them we love them over and over again because words help us bridge the distance between two hearts. Dogs never evolved to understand love that way. Long before they shared our homes, they survived by reading something much older than language. They watched movement. They noticed breathing. They paid attention to rhythm, posture, and tiny shifts in emotion that happened before a single sound was made. Those instincts never disappeared. They simply followed them into our living rooms. That means your dog is listening to you every moment of the day, even when you aren't speaking. They notice how your shoulders soften when you finally sit down after work. They recognize the familiar rhythm of your footsteps before your key even reaches the front door. They can sense when your breathing becomes slow and steady, and they often relax without realizing why. To a dog, safety is not announced. It is felt. Modern research into canine behavior continues to show that dogs are remarkably skilled at reading human body language, facial expressions, and emotional states. Over thousands of years of living beside us, they became experts at understanding people without depending on words. In many ways, they don't hear our hearts through our voices. They hear them through our presence. That is why 2 minutes of peaceful silence beside you can sometimes mean more to your dog than 20 enthusiastic declarations of love. I once heard a woman describe her evening routine with a smile that slowly turned into quiet reflection. I tell him I love him at least 20 times every day. She truly did. Every morning before leaving for work, every phone call home, every bedtime. I love you. I love you. I love you. She couldn't imagine her dog ever doubting how deeply she cared. Then one evening, after another long and exhausting day, she was simply too tired to say much of anything. She dropped her bag by the door, made herself a cup of tea, and sat quietly on the floor instead of turning on the television. She didn't call her dog's name. She didn't ask him to perform a trick. She didn't reach out to hug him. She simply sat there, breathing slowly, letting the weight of the day settle. For a few moments, her dog watched from across the room. Then he walked over without hesitation. He leaned gently against her side. Not because she had invited him, not because she was holding a treat, but because, for the first time that day, everything about her said the same thing. You are safe. She later admitted that this simple moment changed how she understood love forever. She realized her dog hadn't been waiting for another sentence. He had been waiting for her. Perhaps that is one of the quiet lessons dogs offer us every single day. We spend so much of our lives trying to prove our love through bigger gestures, more words, and constant reassurance. Dogs seem to ask a different question. Can I rest when I'm beside you? Can I breathe a little easier when you're near? Can I trust that tomorrow will feel like today? Those questions are answered long before we ever speak. Predictability becomes love. Gentleness becomes love. Calmness becomes love. Consistency becomes love. And trust grows almost invisibly inside those ordinary moments that most people never think to notice. Maybe that is also why these relationships can feel strangely sacred. If every living creature is part of God's creation, then perhaps the extraordinary sensitivity of a dog is not an accident. Perhaps they remind us that real love has always been less about performance and more about presence. Not the presence that fills every silence with words, the presence that makes silence feel peaceful. Dogs don't ask us to become perfect people. They simply ask us to become safe people. Because dogs don't remember every word you say. They remember how safe your presence feels. What if the greatest expression of love your dog is searching for has nothing to do with what you buy, what you say, or even how much time you spend together? What if it begins with something much quieter? A nervous system that finally feels safe enough to rest. When we imagine a happy dog, we often picture wagging tails, new toys, gourmet treats, or exciting adventures. Those things certainly have their place. But beneath every joyful behavior is something even more fundamental. Before a dog can play freely, explore confidently, or learn enthusiastically, their body has to answer one silent question. Am I safe here? That question lives deeper than thought. It lives inside the nervous system. Dogs, like people, constantly adjust themselves to the emotional environment around them. If everything feels calm and predictable, their breathing slows, their muscles soften, their heartbeat settles into an easy rhythm. Without realizing it, they borrow peace from the one they trust. Behavior specialists often describe this as co-regulation. One calm nervous system can gently help another find balance. It's something mothers naturally do with newborn babies. Close companions do it for one another. And every day, dogs quietly do it with the people they love. Perhaps that is why your own emotional state matters far more than you think. Your dog doesn't need you to be cheerful every minute of the day. Life doesn't work that way. They simply need to know that when storms come, your presence still feels steady enough to stand beside. I once heard the story of a rescue dog that had spent the first years of his life moving from one uncertain place to another. Even after being adopted into a loving home, he never truly slept. He would lie down for a few minutes, then suddenly lift his head. Every unfamiliar sound made his ears twitch. Every footstep caused his eyes to open. Even while resting, part of him remained on guard. His new owner tried everything she could think of. She bought a softer bed. She found calming music. She gave him the quietest room in the house. Nothing seemed to change. Then one evening, without planning anything special, she settled into a nearby chair with a novel. She didn't call him over. She didn't ask him to relax. She simply turned a page, took a slow breath, and let the room become still. For nearly an hour, she read without interruption. Somewhere during those peaceful moments, the dog slowly stretched out on the floor beside her. His breathing became deeper. His legs relaxed completely. For the first time since coming home, he entered a sleep so deep that he twitched and dreamed. She hadn't trained him to trust. She had simply become a place where his nervous system no longer felt the need to stay awake. Sometimes we imagine that love changes others through action. Dogs often remind us that love changes others through presence. Perhaps there is something quietly sacred hidden inside that truth. Many people spend their lives believing they must constantly fix, manage, or control everything around them. Yet if you read through Scripture, God's presence is so often described not as frantic intervention, but as steady companionship. Do not be afraid, for I am with you. Again and again, peace comes before solutions. Maybe that is one of the gentle lessons dogs carry into our lives. Not every heart needs to be persuaded. Some hearts simply need a safe place to exhale. And perhaps your dog has been offering that lesson every time they choose to lie quietly at your feet. Love begins where fear finally ends. There is another gentle shift that can completely transform the way your dog experiences your affection. It begins by resisting one very human impulse. We often reach first. We call them over. We pat the couch. We wrap our arms around them because closeness feels comforting to us. But trust grows differently in the canine world. One of the greatest gifts you can offer your dog is the freedom to choose the moment of connection. Choice creates confidence. Choice creates safety. Choice creates trust. Imagine meeting someone who decides every conversation, every hug, and every moment of physical closeness without ever asking what you feel. Even if their intentions are kind, eventually your body begins to anticipate losing control. Dogs experience something remarkably similar. When they know they are free to walk away, they often become far more willing to come closer. That may seem like a small difference, but emotionally, it changes everything. An elderly man once shared a story about his aging Labrador. Every evening, he would pat the empty space beside him on the couch and cheerfully invite the dog to jump up. Every evening, the dog remained on the floor. He secretly wondered if the years had somehow weakened their bond. One day, he decided to stop asking. Not because he loved the dog less, because he wanted to see what his companion would choose. For nearly a week, nothing happened. He simply sat down with his evening tea, read a few pages, and allowed the silence to exist without expectation. Then one quiet night, he felt a gentle weight settle beside him. Without being called, without encouragement, without a command, the Labrador climbed onto the couch, leaned softly against his shoulder, and stayed there until bedtime. The old man later smiled as he told the story. I thought I was teaching him to come closer, he said. It turned out he was teaching me how to wait. That may be one of the most beautiful forms of love we ever learn. Real love doesn't force. It invites. It creates enough safety that another heart chooses to come near on its own. Dogs understand this instinctively. Sometimes we spend so much energy trying to prove our love that we forget to leave room for trust to bloom naturally. Love offered without pressure often becomes the love that lasts the longest. The next expression of love may surprise you because it happens at mealtime. Most of us believe feeding is simply about nutrition. We choose healthy ingredients, fill the bowl, place it on the floor, and feel satisfied knowing our dogs have eaten well. But to a dog's brain, eating has never been just about food. For thousands of years, survival depended on searching, tracking scents, solving tiny problems, and exploring the environment. Every successful discovery rewarded the brain with powerful feelings of satisfaction. Hunting wasn't only about filling an empty stomach. It gave the mind purpose. Those ancient instincts are still alive today. When every meal appears instantly in the same bowl at the same spot, the stomach is fed, but the mind often finishes the experience almost as quickly as it began. Simple activities like hiding kibble around the yard, using a puzzle feeder, or scattering food through the grass awaken those natural searching instincts. Your dog begins sniffing, exploring, thinking, and making tiny discoveries one after another. The meal lasts longer. The brain stays engaged. The body relaxes afterward with a deeper sense of fulfillment. One family decided to spend just 10 extra minutes each evening hiding small portions of their dog's dinner around the backyard. Nothing dramatic happened overnight, but after several weeks, they noticed something unexpected. Their energetic border collie stopped pacing through the house every evening. Instead, after finishing his little search, he would curl up peacefully beside the window and spend the rest of the night resting. The food itself had not changed. The experience had. Sometimes we think love means giving more. Dogs often teach us that love also means allowing them to become who they were created to be. They do not need calories alone. They need curiosity. They need purpose. They need opportunities to use the remarkable mind that evolution gave them. A fulfilled mind is one of the purest forms of love. Perhaps the deepest misunderstanding between humans and dogs isn't about affection at all. It's about communication. Many relationships struggle not because love disappears, but because quiet voices go unheard. Dogs rarely begin with dramatic signals. Long before barking, growling, or pulling away, they whisper. A quick lick across the lips when no food is nearby. A yawn in the middle of a stressful moment. A slow turn of the head. Eyes that blink softly before looking away. These are often called calming signals. They are your dog's gentle attempt to reduce tension before fear grows any larger. They are not acts of disobedience. They are invitations to understand what words cannot express. A little girl once noticed her family's dog yawning repeatedly while visitors filled the living room. She laughed and whispered, "He's so sleepy." Her mother looked more carefully. The dog wasn't tired. His body was politely asking for space. Instead of encouraging more attention, they quietly opened the back door and let him wander into the peaceful garden for a few minutes. When he returned, his tail moved loosely again. His eyes looked softer. The room had not changed. His feeling of safety had. How many moments like that pass unnoticed every day? Not because people don't love their dogs, because no one ever taught them this silent language. Perhaps that is true for people as well. Some prayers are never spoken aloud. Some fears hide behind polite smiles. Some hearts whisper long before they cry. The dogs who share our homes gently remind us to notice the whispers before they become screams. The quietest signals often carry the deepest trust. There is one more way your dog experiences love that often goes unnoticed because it has nothing to do with what you do for them. It has everything to do with what you carry inside yourself. Have you ever walked into a room trying to smile while your mind was somewhere else entirely? Most people have. You tell your family you're fine. You answer every question with a reassuring voice. You continue checking items off your list, hoping that if you keep moving, your heart will eventually catch up. But your dog doesn't begin by listening to your words. They begin by listening to you. Long before your first sentence leaves your lips, your breathing has already changed. Your muscles have become slightly tighter. Your movements are a little quicker. Even the way you place your keys on the table sounds different. Dogs notice all of it. Researchers continue to explore what many devoted dog owners have quietly suspected for years. Dogs are remarkably sensitive to human emotional states. They respond to changes in posture, facial expression, breathing, scent, and countless tiny behavioral cues that most people never realize they are giving away. Stress itself changes the chemistry of the body. And although dogs may not understand the reasons behind our emotions, they often recognize that something inside us has shifted. Sometimes that creates what feels like an invisible mirror. When we remain calm, many dogs soften beside us. When we carry tension through the day, they often become more alert without understanding why. A woman once shared that her golden retriever had developed an unusual habit. Whenever friends asked how she was doing, she smiled politely and answered the same way. "I'm fine." She believed it was easier than explaining the grief she had been carrying since losing her mother. Yet every evening, her dog refused to leave her side. He followed her into every room. He rested beside the bathroom door. He lay outside the bedroom, even when she encouraged him to sleep elsewhere. At first, she worried something was wrong with him. Months later, during a quiet conversation with a close friend, she finally admitted through tears that she wasn't fine at all. As she cried for the first time in a long while, her dog quietly laid his head across her lap and relaxed more deeply than he had in weeks. Nothing about that moment suggested he had been waiting for her tears. Perhaps he had simply been waiting for her heart to stop hiding. There is something profoundly humbling about that. Dogs cannot solve our problems. They cannot erase grief or remove anxiety. But they often carry the emotional atmosphere of the homes they love. That realization is not meant to create guilt. It is meant to offer compassion. You do not have to become emotionally perfect for your dog. No human being can. What matters is allowing moments of peace to exist, both for yourself and for the companion who quietly shares your emotional world. Perhaps this is one of the reasons God allows animals to touch our lives so deeply. Maybe they are not here only to receive our affection. Maybe they also reveal the places within us that still need gentleness. Sometimes your dog walks beside your sadness until you are finally ready to acknowledge it yourself. Sometimes they become the quiet reminder that healing begins with honesty. Sometimes your dog isn't carrying their anxiety, they're carrying yours. And when you begin caring for your own heart with patience and grace, you may discover that your dog's heart becomes lighter too. Love is not built only through extraordinary moments. In fact, some of the deepest trust grows inside moments so ordinary that we almost forget they exist. Every morning, your dog watches for familiar footsteps. The sound of the coffee maker beginning another day. The gentle greeting you always whisper before opening the door. The evening walk that arrives at nearly the same time each night. To us, these moments can feel repetitive. To a dog, they become promises. Predictability is deeply comforting because it removes uncertainty. When today's world resembles yesterday's, a dog's nervous system spends less energy preparing for surprises and more energy simply living. That is why small rituals often become enormous expressions of love. Not because they are exciting, because they are dependable. One widow spoke about the months after losing her husband. The silence inside the house became almost unbearable. Each morning, she still found herself placing 2 mugs on the kitchen counter before remembering she only needed one. Eventually, she stopped correcting the habit. Instead, she poured 1 cup of coffee for herself and carried the second empty mug to the porch, where her old Labrador always waited beside the rocking chair. She would sip her coffee. He would quietly rest at her feet. Neither of them hurried. Neither of them asked anything from the other. Morning after morning, that simple ritual became the first peaceful moment of her day. Years later, she admitted she wasn't sure whether she had saved the dog after losing her husband, or whether the dog had quietly saved her. Perhaps the answer was both. Healing rarely arrives through dramatic breakthroughs. More often, it grows inside ordinary moments, repeated with faithful love. A familiar walk, a gentle bedtime routine, the same reassuring smile each morning. Tiny rituals become anchors. They remind your dog that no matter how uncertain the world outside may feel, this relationship remains steady. Trust grows quietly inside ordinary moments, repeated with love. As we come to the final lesson, it may be the most personal one of all. This is not about replacing science with mystery. Nor is it about suggesting that every coincidence carries a hidden message. It is simply an invitation to see your relationship with your dog through a slightly wider window. If we believe that God is the creator of every living thing, then perhaps every creature reflects a small piece of his wisdom, not with words, but through the life they quietly live. Some dogs seem to teach patience because they heal more slowly than we expect. Others teach forgiveness, greeting us with gentle eyes, even after our difficult days. Some arrive during seasons of deep loneliness and somehow make an empty house feel like a home again. Others seem to interrupt our endless rushing, reminding us that an afternoon spent sitting quietly together is never truly wasted. These may not be miracles in the dramatic sense, but they can still become sacred moments. A woman who had been married for more than 40 years once described the months after her husband's passing as feeling like she had forgotten how to move through life. Every morning she woke up with no clear reason to leave her bed. The only steady presence remaining in the house was the aging dog they had raised together. Each morning, at precisely the same time, he would walk to her bedside and wait. Not barking, not demanding. Simply waiting. Eventually, she would smile, reach for his leash, and step outside. One walk became another, One sunrise became another. Little by little, life began returning. She later said she could never explain whether the dog understood her grief. She only knew that somehow he walked beside it until she could carry it herself. Perhaps that is enough. Sometimes we search for grand signs from heaven while overlooking the quiet gifts already resting beside us. Sometimes God whispers through the creatures that never speak our language. When you look back over everything we have explored together, one truth becomes beautifully simple. Your dog has never been asking you to become a perfect owner. They do not keep score of your mistakes. They are not waiting for flawless routines or endless entertainment. What they long for is surprisingly gentle. To feel understood. To feel safe enough to rest. To trust your presence. To know that the bond between you is steady, even on imperfect days. If you have ever worried that you missed something, if you have ever wondered whether you could have loved your dog better, let that worry become something softer today. Understanding can begin this very moment. Trust is not built all at once. It is rebuilt every morning. Every quiet greeting. Every patient pause. Every choice to listen before reacting. Every moment you allow your dog to be exactly who they are, perhaps that is the lesson they have been trying to teach us all along. Love is not measured by how much we give. It is measured by how deeply another heart feels safe enough to receive it. The greatest gift you can give your dog isn't more affection. It's feeling understood. As we come to the end of our time together, I hope you leave with one quiet thought that stays with you long after this video is over. Your dog has probably never been asking you to love them more. They've simply been hoping you'll understand the language they've been speaking all along. That language isn't built from perfect training, expensive gifts, or constant attention. It's built from calm moments, patient choices, gentle routines, the kind of trust that grows almost unnoticed until one day you realize your dog has fallen asleep beside you without a single worry in the world. If today's conversation has changed the way you see your companion, don't feel like you have to transform everything overnight. Real change rarely begins with grand gestures. It usually begins with one small decision. Maybe tonight, instead of calling your dog over, you'll simply sit quietly and let them decide when they're ready to come close. Maybe tomorrow's walk will be just a little slower. Maybe you'll notice that tiny yawn, that soft blink, or that gentle glance away and recognize it as the beginning of a conversation instead of something to ignore. Small moments have a remarkable way of becoming lifelong memories. Perhaps that is true not only for dogs, but for all the relationships that truly matter. And perhaps this is one of the gentle ways God teaches us how to love. Not through extraordinary displays that everyone can see, but through faithful presence when no one is watching. Through patience when rushing would be easier. Through understanding before judgment. Through choosing to make another heart feel safe. Our dogs practice those lessons every single day. Maybe they've been quietly teaching us all along. Before we say goodbye, I'd love to hear about the companion who has walked beside your own journey. What is your dog's name? Can you remember a single moment when you suddenly realize just how deeply your dog loved you. Or perhaps your dog has taught you something about courage, forgiveness, hope, or simply how to slow down and appreciate one ordinary day. If you'd like to share your story in the comments, I promise you're not just telling it for me. Someone else may read your words at exactly the moment they need them most. Your story could remind another grieving heart that healing is still possible. It could help someone understand their own dog in a completely new way. Or it might simply let another person know they are not walking this journey alone. Thank you for spending these moments with me. And even more importantly, thank you for choosing to understand the remarkable soul waiting patiently at your side. Take gentle care of yourself. Take gentle care of your dog. And never underestimate what can grow between two hearts that truly learn to understand one another.